Hey guys, it's Tuesday.
And you know what that means.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Amber.
And this is another episode of True Crime and Chill. Okay, hey all you chillers. Today's episode is one that really, really needs to be told. And unfortunately, it is not it's not an unusual story, I should say. This is a story about domestic violence and relationships and how we can actually see the signs so we can help the people we love if we ever see them in a situation like this, or if you're in that situation. The story could also bring awareness to the dangers that women face when trying to leave abusive situations, and maybe the story could actually save the life of someone choosing to leave. This is the tragic story of Emma Walker.
Let's do it.
Okay, so Emma Jane Walker was born March 20th, 2000. Okay, she is a baby, in Knoxville, Tennessee. And honestly, from everything I have read from articles and Facebook posts and Instagram, posts and stuff, she was a huge light in everyone's eyes. She always had the biggest smile on her face. She was kind to everyone. She wanted great things for herself. Like her mom, Jill, had said in an interview actually that Emma had wanted to be a NICU nurse or a veterinarian because she had a passion for both jobs. She loved animals and she loved babies, and so she wanted to be able to kind of work hard to be able to achieve one of those. She was a super hard worker in school and was on the cheerleading squad as well, something that she was really proud of. Her friend said that she loved hyping up the crowd, and I totally get that. I was a cheerleader in high school, and it was actually the funnest thing about being on the team. So, I totally get that. Emma actually ended up joining the Bobcats cheer team in the fall of 2014 as a freshman. She was only 14, but Amber, you got to look at the pictures of this girl. Okay. I put some pictures in here and she was just so full of life. It's honestly really hard not to have your eye drawn to her with that smile. She was gorgeous. She was just so pretty.
She's your quintessential popular looking girl.
Yeah, she is. But she also really seemed you could go to her and be like, hey, I need to talk to you about something. And she'd be willing to sit down with you for hours and just chat with you about it and
she
stuff.
Seems friendly. But
she did.
She's hard to say, but based on the stuff that you're saying, and she does seem like a very warm and friendly and caring person.
Oh yeah. And and all the all the pictures and stuff, unfortunately, that's really all her friends have left of her right now and stuff. So, but all the pictures that she'd post on her social media and everything, and with all of her and her friends, and it was just these big giant smiles, and she was always saying how much she loved them and how she was proud of them and all this stuff. She was really that hype man for her friends and stuff. She really just radiated the warmth and love, and she was somebody that you wanted to be friends with. And her friends and family really did agree to that. Everything, like I said, I've read about Emma was that she was just so bright to be around. And that's what everybody loved about her. And that light that she had caught the attention of junior football player Riley Gall, who was he was sidelined during that fall season, her freshman year, mainly because he had an injury and stuff. But, when you're sidelined, you're paying attention to the game, paying attention to cheerleaders. You're not really focused too much on the game and stuff. So he saw her. He actually expressed interest in Emma, and nobody really had any concerns. Emma's friends and her parents all said that, he was very charming. He was boy next door type. He was very kind and normal. When they started dating, he went over to Emma's house and met her parents and had dinner with them. And he was just very sweet and very caring about her and stuff. They would hang out, they would go to dances, they would go for car rides, they would do all this stuff. The only red flag that I can really see right now is that the fact that he was 2 years older than her. But I mean, that was super normal in high school. Yeah. It was a super normal thing in high school and everything and stuff. And so, and I mean, her parents kind of had some reserves about that as well, because, she was 14, he was 16 at the time. And so they were a little bit cautious about that, but Riley genuinely proved that, hey, you know what? He's a pretty good guy. He's treating our daughter well. Let's just see where this goes. So Emma and Riley started this relationship. And like I said, her social media sites were all about her friends and all about him. She was head over heels in love with this guy. I remember that from high school. Okay. My first serious relationship was, I thought this guy and I were going to be together forever and that we were going to get married. And Emma really seemed like she had thought she had found the same with Riley.
So I was pretty boy crazy growing up.
She was Hanson crazy. Don't let her lie to you.
Hey, I'm engaged. Just saying. No,
Not to a Hanson brother.
hey, no,
I mean, his name is Taylor.
it. That is true. Um, no, I like even in kindergarten, like I was chasing boys around the playground, like
Ooh,
boys. Oh no, I was way.
Amber.
Yeah, no, it was a thing. And so really, like, but every boy when you're that young, like he's the one, right? Like
Oh
he's the
yeah.
one you're gonna spend. And then as you get older, you definitely realize, like, you know, granted, I do have some friends from high school who did marry their high school sweetheart, and they are still together and
Oh
still
yeah. And
going
those are the
strong,
cutest stories.
and that's great. But it's really uncommon. So when I see 14-year-old girls, they're like, "But I'm gonna marry him." I'm like, "Okay, sweetie, you still have another 4 years before you're even legally allowed to do it. Second of all, you're gonna be a completely different person in 4 years, and so is he. So
Honestly,
chill just
yeah,
a
like
little."
this is something you see a lot with military relationships too.
Mhm.
Like, it's the guys like they graduate and the girls graduate and they get married directly out of high school, and like you said, you're a completely different person. I'm a completely different person than I was 2 years ago.
Right.
Like
They
it's
say, honestly, in a lot of psychology stuff, that you don't really become the person you're going to become until you're 30. And even then, that's still not set in stone. Like, I know I had a huge shift in everything when I turned
oh
30. I
yeah.
know you remember. I just finally looked around and I was like, what the heck am I doing? Like, what am I wasted the last 30 years of my life on,
Yeah.
XYZ. Like, I'm not, no, this life is mine and I only get one and I'm going to do what I want with it. So, and that ultimately led me to where I'm at now, where I feel like I'm in a really good place. So, that's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
But it took until I was 30 to be that person where I was like, no, this is me and this is
Yeah.
how it is. And even then, it took practice to be okay with being myself. So,
Yeah.
and when you're 14, the other side of the coin, sorry, this is suddenly becoming like a relationship thing, but when you're 14, you don't know what it's like to actually be by yourself, to
Yeah.
know yourself. Like, I didn't even until I was probably 22 when I lived alone for the first time. Like, I learned a lot about myself. And so, when you're 14, you can't even imagine what it is to be by yourself or yourself. And I so I get
Exactly.
it
Like
because I was
it's
there and I felt that way
yeah,
when I was 14. But
like we all get it. Like we all do. And I'm pretty sure that's what Emma's parents were thinking too, because it's like, they're young, they're in love, like and I mean she might have really loved Riley. Like she might have really loved Riley, but like, it was that head over heels, like if I'm not with you, I'm gonna die type of thing. Because that's how it is in high school. That's how it is. You think that person is going to be your one and only forever. And so they get into this relationship and it's literally it's the epitome of a high school relationship. So at first, like her friends, like they were like okay with everything. Like they were okay with them dating, they were okay with them like being around each other and stuff. But like it got to the point where like Riley didn't really hang around with Emma's friends too much. Like she would always be like, "Oh, well, he's just shy and he just doesn't like really." But then they realized like Riley didn't really have a lot of friends of his own that he hung around with. And so, but like, but he seemed like that quiet, like shy boy next door and everything. So everybody was like, okay, well, maybe that was it. But it got to the point where like he did, even though he didn't really hang out with their friends, instead of letting her do it, his behavior started becoming controlling to the point where like he would want her to hang out with him every day. And like I get it. Like I was like in that relationship where like the guy I was dating at the time, we would hang out all the time, like all the time. And if like one of us didn't want to hang out with the other person, it'd be like, okay, why are you mad at me right now? Like, because that's just how it was and stuff. But like, it would get to the point where like he would genuinely get mad at her, and he would get like he would talk to her and be like, well, I don't like you talking to this person, or I don't like you wearing this, or I don't want you going here. But he would say it like with the way of like, well, I'm just caring about you. But he would only say it very rarely. So it would be like, oh, like this like offhand type of thing. And her friend Lauren Hutton, Lauren, I apologize if you're listening to this, and if I just butchered your last name, I'm sorry. She said in an interview after her death, she's like, Riley got more possessive and more clingy towards her and wouldn't let her do certain things.
Yes, those are definitely red flags. I had a relationship that started that was really, really similar a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw those signs and I was like, yeah, this is really unhealthy. Like, I need to get out of this. Like, he would even do the thing where he'd like break up with me, but he'd like do it so that I would chase after him. Uh,
Yep.
and then when I stopped chasing, then of course he would come back and be like, I'm sorry, let's talk.
Yep.
And then
And I had that relationship too. I had that too. And it was like, it got to the point where like I would go out to the bar with my friends and he, like, the thing that like end all be all of our relationship, like that ended it completely, was the fact that like he showed up because I stopped texting him. He had shown up at the bar and was like trying to like drag me into his car to talk to him. And like it took my friends like standing in front of me and towering over him and pushing him away, being like, you need to get the hell away from her, for him to actually like leave me alone. Like it was a huge thing. It was a huge thing because he never wanted to hang out with my friends. He never liked my friends, or like he would make comments about my friends, be like, oh yeah, no, she's really pretty and stuff like that. And I like looking back now, I'm like, wow, why didn't I see that? But like then like you don't realize it. And that's one of the things that a lot of people don't get, especially with teenagers. When you're a teenager, your brain isn't fully developed enough to do that.
It's not even so much that, but it's also that whole like, oh, but if I don't do this, he's going to leave me. And then what am I going to do?
Yeah. Yeah. So
then you move on.
Over the course of like the next 2 years, like it was like the epitome of like a high school relationship, you know. Riley and Emma would end up going through, and it was a very troubling relationship too. Like a lot of people didn't really see a lot of it. They just saw, you know, they would to non-watchful eye, it like looked like a high school relationship, like a typical one. Like they would break up, they'd get back together, they'd fight, they'd break up again, they'd get back together, they'd fight. Oh my God, I love you. Oh my God, I hate you. Stuff like that over and over and over again. But the thing is it would often result in Riley like saying some really horrible things over Snapchat, like calling her a whore, or like telling her that she wasn't like worth it to anybody else, or saying that like nobody else was ever going to want her, and like all this stuff, like saying all these really like really mean things that he shouldn't have been saying. But then right after he would say it, he would beg her to forgive him, be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I don't mean it, I was mad and everything. And like looking at it now as an adult, like I see him doing that. It was trying to keep a hold on her so she wouldn't leave. And that's something like I see in a lot of young relationships and everything. And so like I wholeheartedly believe that in high school, especially like in middle school, especially now with kids being sexually active so young, like I really feel like they need to have that class where they sit down and they go, here are the signs of an abusive relationship. Here's what you need to look for in your relationship. If this is there, then here are the signs of manipulation. Because if not, then you got girls and boys, because it happens to guys too, unfortunately. And you got girls and boys going through these relationships and not realizing like what their significant others are doing is super manipulative and super controlling and super gaslighting. And it's to the point where like they grow up and they get into these relationships and they don't know how to be in these relationships because they were never taught like what should be right and wrong in these relationships. And it's to the point now where like women are genuinely afraid to leave relationships. Like I've had people comment on Facebook, like on comments or whatever, about women who are like beaten to death. And it's like some of the comments are like, well, why didn't she leave when it started getting bad? Because you don't realize it started getting bad.
No.
Like that's what abusers do. What they do, it's kind of like if you stick a frog in a pot of boiling water, it's going to jump out. But if you put a frog in a pot of cold water and slowly turn that heat up, it's not going to realize that it's in danger until it's already dead. And that's what it is. When you get into an abusive relationship, it's not 100% go right away. It's definitely like built up.
It warms up. Well, and that's, I mean, again, like I said, it's when you're in relationships like that, you know, where he was saying things to her like nobody's going to want her and stuff. If you say that enough times to a person, they start to believe it. So then they get in their head, you know, well, nobody else wants me. So if, you know, I don't have this relationship, what do I have? And
exactly,
there's obviously a clearer answer to that, which is then you don't be in a relationship, and that's okay, because then you can, any money you earn is yours, and you can do whatever you want with it. And if you want to, live by yourself and walk around your house in your underwear and a face mask with your hair all funky, fine. Then there's nobody there to judge you for it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But in high school, because, like I said, especially
your whole world is them.
To be alone and know yourself, it's harder to understand wanting to be by yourself.
Yeah, your whole world is them. I remember when my first serious relationship ended, like I was heartbroken. Like it like to the point where like I couldn't get out of bed and stuff. And I didn't know what it was, because I was like, I feel so dumb for feeling this, but it's like you're in high school, your whole world is them when you're in a relationship, and
your emotions are also at an all-time high though.
Yes.
Just because your hormones are still like, you're becoming who you're going to become.
Yeah.
So,
anyway. Yeah. So as the fights got worse, okay, Riley's behavior got scarier and scarier. Mm. Like, girl, Emma worked at a grocery store, okay? Like, she worked. She was 16. She worked, and 14, 15. So she worked and everything. And I think, like, the laws in Tennessee, because she lived in Knoxville. And so, which is a few hours from me and stuff. And so I think the laws in Tennessee are at 15, you can work. So she worked at a grocery store, and Riley would, like, go and just sit outside in his car and wait for her.
Like, the whole shift?
Yeah. So, like, her entire shift. So she worked, like, an 8-hour shift. She would just sit out there. Like, he would just sit out there and, like, wait for her. And her friend said it was just really weird, because it was like he was, like, seeing whether or not she was where she said she was gonna be. So, like, oh, I have work today, that's why we can't hang out. So he would go to her work and make sure she was actually at work and not with somebody else and stuff. And, like, he would send her Snapchat messages, like I said, calling her a bitch, saying how much he hated her, like, all this other stuff. Like, in one article, her mom, Jill, was actually quoted as saying, like, we on one occasion saw one that said, "I'll see your name in the obituary." He wrote that to her, and we questioned him about it, and he said, "I was just angry, and that's when I started to get more red flags."
Yeah. That's a huge... It's almost like those girls that threaten to commit suicide if their boyfriend leaves them. Like, that is just manipulative.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, that's literally what he was doing. And her parents saw it. Like, her mom, like, her mom was like, it was just a complete 180 from the boy that we had originally met. Yeah. And this had been 2 years. Like, this has been 2 years of all this going on. This wasn't just like, oh, they'd only been dating. This has been 2 years of all this going on.
Right. And in high school,
he
that's obviously a really long time.
Yeah. And so he obviously had his clutches in her pretty freaking deep. So Emma's friends, understandably, were getting really worried about her. Like, they were genuinely worried about her. They would talk to her and be like, hey, you know what? This behavior that is not normal at all. You need to get out of this relationship. What he's telling you, what he's saying, what he's doing, like, this is not an okay thing. Like, her guy friends would talk to her and be like, Emma, like, this is not okay. Like, don't let yourself accept this and stuff. And she would just be like, no, it's fine. Like it's okay. Like it's fine. He just, he just gets worried and stuff, because then it's like, at the same time, it's like, who would want to believe that they're in an abusive relationship? Like, I know every woman I know is like, oh, well, that'll never happen to me. But at the same time, when you're in it, like, it's not something you want to admit.
Right. No, I get that too. I actually had a friend. She was older, actually, a number of years ago, and her boyfriend would make comments like that. Like, she wouldn't ever wear makeup because he would get, like, super jealous if she wore makeup out of the house. And so the very first time, like, I knew her for like a year before I ever saw her wear makeup. And it was, they were on the outs, and so she's like, I'm going to wear makeup, and blah, 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 blah. And she actually started seeing this other guy who was a really nice guy. And, and then the other guy decided that he wanted her back. And so she went back to him. They went off and on for a number of years. Like, it was such a, like, I was like, lady, whoa, even I can see that this is not okay. Like, there are some red flags here, but she eventually got rid of it.
Yeah. Well, like, you don't want to admit that you're in an abusive relationship. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Like, you don't want to, like, there's retaliation issues, there's rejection, there's like,
also
judgment.
The issue of, at this point, I've been in it for so long. I don't know anything else. I've wasted all of this time.
Yeah.
Like
And
that.
you don't know anything else. And that's the thing. And Emma, unfortunately, because she started dating him so young, she didn't know like an actual, like, true good relationship. So once Riley sent that message, Emma's parents saw it. Like I said, they banned Riley from their daughter's lives. Like, they took her phone away. They took away anything that she could contact him on. They made it to where they couldn't hang out. Like, like they basically like made sure like she couldn't see him, but that didn't work at all. Like, that didn't stop them. Riley ended up buying Emma an iPod Touch, so whenever she was connected to Wi-Fi, she could text him. So, yeah. So even though her parents advised Emma to leave Riley, she refused, because every time they had a fight, she would get messages after saying how much he loved her and how sorry he was and how, like, he didn't mean to say what he said.
Not just that, but that's something her parents should have realized. Like, the more you tell your daughter that she shouldn't do it, the more she's gonna want to do it.
Right? I never listened to my parents. Like, I never listened to my dad. And looking back now, I probably realize I should have. But, like, you're a stubborn teenager and you feel like, oh, I'm an adult now. I can do what I want. I can make my own decisions. I can do this. But, like, it also didn't help that Riley was basically isolating Emma to the point where, like, she thought that he would be the one for her and that he would never hurt her. Like, she thought that, like, he was never going to actually hurt her. He was just mad, or he said some things out of anger. So by 2016, Emma and Riley, like I said before, had been seeing each other for 2 years, and the abuse had only gotten worse. By this time, Emma was a 16-year-old junior, and Riley had actually graduated high school and was an 18-year-old college freshman 20 minutes away at Maryville College. Sadly, even the short distance didn't work, as the relationship was taking more of a toll on Emma. So him leaving and being 20 minutes away and not being able to see her every day and being able to, like, be there in contact and physical contact with her every day, it was starting to kind of make her realize what was going on and stuff. It was starting to kind of make her, like, see, like, okay, you know what, maybe this isn't the best idea. So around Halloween, her family finally decided to ground her to the point of, like, monitoring movements, because it was getting to the point where, like, Emma's mental health was getting affected. So they only allowed her to go to school. They only allowed her to go to cheerleading practice, and they made sure she went, like, they made sure she knew where they knew where she went every single minute of the day. Like, she was on lockdown, like, and it started working.
I mean, I assume with the contact with Riley severed, it was easy for her to start to see how toxic the relationship was.
Yeah. And her dad, Mark, was quoted as saying, like, she was becoming the old Emma again. She was hanging out with her family and friends, actually being involved with the family. Like, she would, instead of holding herself up in her room to talk to Riley, she would be coming out for family dinners and family time to spend together and everything. She was texting her friends and saying, like, oh yeah, no, we're done for good. And her friends were, like, speculating the legitimacy of that, because, of course, like, she had said that before, but, like, she was actually serious and they were excited. They were excited that, Emma was coming back. Their friend was finally back to them. And however, Riley did not take the end of the relationship well.
Most abusers don't. They don't want to lose that hold onto their victims.
So Riley went way overboard, and it kind of ties in with the comment about the girls who threatened to commit suicide because they don't want their boyfriend to leave. When Emma ended the relationship, Riley ended up taking a bottle of Vicodin and washing it down with alcohol to kill himself. It didn't work, but his friends were quoted as saying, like, he would be slipping between moods of, like, depression and anger, and saying how he was so upset and how he was so sad and how he can't live without Emma and all this other stuff.
Right. Basically making himself out to be the victim.
Exactly. So on November 18th, 2016, Emma ended up going to a party with friends that her parents had allowed her to go to. Something that she was actually super excited about.
Yeah.
But around 11:30, Emma had gone to her friend Zach, and she was showing him text messages that she'd been getting all night, saying, like, it's a strange number that's been messaging me. I don't know who it is. But the messages have been really weird. And the most recent one that she had gotten before she had gone to Zach had really freaked her out.
What does it say?
It said, "Come outside alone if you don't want to see a loved one get hurt." So Zach told her, grab your keys, go to your car, we're going to get you home. But as she was doing that, another message said, "I've got someone you love. If you don't comply, I will hurt them." She then got another message after that saying, "If you don't believe me, call me and hear his screams." Yeah.
That's dark. That's real dark.
It gets weirder.
Oh.
Okay. So people came in and were like, "Oh, Riley had been dropped off at the house."
Like, he went to it?
No, like he was thrown out of a vehicle and was laying on face down on the ground, and he had like cuts and bruises and scrapes all over him and everything. And when everybody went to him to like see what was going on, he said that he had been kidnapped and that he had been taken and all this other stuff, and that like he didn't know what was going on and he ended up there and all this. Yeah.
So even from here, it sounds like he pretended to be kidnapped to get sympathy, and then those text messages were from him. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, this is back at a time where you could download like a Text Now app and get a completely different number and not have it be traced back to you.
Yep.
So Emma obviously like checked on him and made sure he was okay, but it freaked her out. Like it really did. It freaked her out because like, you know, she was getting these text messages and all of a sudden her ex-boyfriend shows up battered and she's like, what the heck? But so she basically told Riley, she was like, look, we're done. Leave me alone. You need to go. And so he literally just kind of just left the party alone.
Yeah, something tells me he doesn't give up that easily, though.
Yeah, like he didn't even have them call the cops or his parents or anything. Like he just left. Like, I'm sorry, but if I had just gotten kidnapped, I'd be like, we need to call the police. Like, he called his friend and told him that he had been kidnapped, but his friend didn't believe him either. And he even told his friend not to contact the authorities. Like his friend was like, okay, well, if this is actually happening, then we need to contact the authorities. And Riley's like, no, like we don't need to and everything. Like I'll figure it out. But like, I like, this is what happened and blah, blah, blah. And his friend was like, what the heck is going on?
Oh gosh, how many red flags are we gonna throw at me here? Because
right, there's a ton of them. Like it, and it's just like, and it's like I feel terrible for this girl, and I feel terrible for her family because, like, even like they really would have had to just pack this poor girl up and move across the country for her to get away from this guy. Like I really feel like that was the only way this would have ended anything without her dying. And it really just shows that this is a huge issue that women in abusive relationships have. Because
sometimes the guys, though, I've seen.
Well, yeah.
I actually had a guy friend, nicest guy, good looking guy, young for me, so not like interested, but like really good looking kid, right? Like he kind of, when we were growing up, he was almost like my little brother, and he got into this relationship. And she did the thing, you know, where she was like, if you leave me, I'll commit suicide. Like, I'll kill myself. Yeah. And we were all like, whoa, dude, like, hey, this is,
you need to go.
That's not okay. And if you're unhappy, you need to leave her. He was a counselor at camp, and we have a very strict rule about, you know, people not coming out to the camp because children and their safety. Right.
Yeah.
And she just showed up. Like she didn't call, she didn't ask, she just showed up. And like she brought her grandpa, right? And like she brought a watermelon thinking like that was going to make everything okay, that it was okay that she came to check up on him because she didn't like that he wasn't allowed to text, but there was no service out there because it's on the other side of the lake, right? So
yeah,
no service. And she just showed up, and we're like I was director, so I had to be like, excuse me, like this
you
is
need to leave.
Okay. You do not have permission to be here. You do not have a background check done. You need to leave. And she got really mad at me, but it was just like, yeah, this is a safety thing, and your boyfriend is fine. Like he's not flirting with other women. He's actually been doing nothing but talking about you. You can leave now.
Yeah, exactly. And like, but it just like, this just shows like the issues, because it's like, you know, the law can't really do anything unless there is a physical contact need. Like it's even hard for women to get protection orders without any physical assault. Yep. And even then, a protection order is just a paper. It doesn't do anything until they like you can have it, but it doesn't mean that like, it's going to stop them from going after. It's not a magical force field.
No, it's a piece.
And I really feel like Riley knew, like, oh, Emma is done completely this time. Like, I feel like he knew that she was completely and utterly done with him. So he was trying to do whatever he could to get her back. And that included scaring the ever-living daylights out of this poor girl.
Right.
Like, it was bad. Like, to the point where the next morning, Emma went home. Okay. And she was home alone. And she was supposed to meet her mom that morning. And when she was getting ready, she ended up texting Riley in a panic saying, like, you know, I hate you, but I need you to come over there. Somebody's come over here, because she knew he was in town. Somebody's in all black walking outside my window, keeps ringing the doorbell, knocking on windows, stuff like that and everything. And like he texted her and was like, I'll be there in a bit. I'm speeding. I'll be there soon. And like immediately came over. So when Emma missed the appointment, like the meeting with her mom that morning, Jill ended up going back to the house, and she was shocked to kind of see Emma and Riley outside in the front yard together. And when she came up, she was like, "Why are you here? You're not allowed to be around my daughter. You're not allowed to be around my house." And Emma was trying to calm her mom down, being like, "Hey, like, this is what was going on. I called him because I needed help." And Riley was like, "Look, I was just helping Emma with this. Like, it wasn't anything. She called me. Like, she wanted me to come over and check this out." And he ended up leaving. And Jill, like, was just like, "What?" Because they couldn't find any evidence that anybody had ever been around the house.
Yeah. So, here's what I fully don't understand. If Emma was that scared, why did she text Riley? Of all people, Riley, I'd be like texting my parents and be like, "Dude, there's some creepy dude outside." Right?
I don't know. And it was never really explained. But
Jill, yeah, the fact that he showed up so quickly really should have been like, and not just that, but why would she not suspect him? Like, it's obvious that he's going to extremes to try and get her to. It's honestly, this is classic narcissistic behavior where you do things to try and bring in, like sometimes they'll email or sometimes they'll send a text trying to get you to reply. Like, they'll send things specifically trying to get your response. So yeah,
no, it's insane. Like, and Jill actually asked Emma, she was like, "Are you sure? Like, are you sure that it wasn't Riley who did this?" And like, and all this other stuff. Like, she was really worried that he was trying to insert herself back into her life and stuff. And so they ended up, like, she was genuinely worried. Like, her and Mark were genuinely worried that, like, Emma was being followed, that, like, Riley was going to do something. Like, they really thought that if she was away from the house and away from them, like, Riley would try something. And it's honestly a very genuine fear that her parents had, because if he was behind all this, and to this day, he still denies that he was ever the one that was outside her window and stuff like that to this day. But we all know how true that could be. So Emma's parents actually started making sure that Emma was basically safeguarded at all times. So they would follow her to work. They would wait at her work. They would follow her home, like cheerleading practice, school. Like, they would make sure, like, she was accountable at all times, so they knew where she was. But by that Sunday night, like that following Sunday night, everything was starting to get better. Like, Emma hadn't heard from Riley. She was getting ready for school the next day. She was like eating dinner with the family. She was heading for bed. She ended up kissing her parents goodnight, and she headed to her room. Now, it's a one-story house, so it's not like she had to go upstairs or anything. But on November 21st, 2016, at 6 a.m., Jill had walked into her daughter's room to wake her up so she can get her ready. Now, this was a little bit earlier than when Emma normally got up, but that was because she needed to wash her hair that day and stuff, because she was, like, her hair, so she had hair washing days. So she had walked in, and Jill was quoted as saying, like, like, usually it was early, but like the noise of the door opening would have woken Emma up, but she didn't wake up. So Jill was like, "Hey, Emma," and like called her name and stuff, and Emma still didn't wake up. So she moved her leg, and Emma was still, like, she wasn't moving at all. So Jill says she doesn't really remember what happened next. She knew she checked for a pulse, and there was no pulse. So they end up calling 911, and like just some of the transcripts from the 911 call, like, she's on there. She's like, like, my 16-year-old daughter, she's not waking up. Like, I don't know what's going on. I need help. And like, she just like I didn't listen to the call because I couldn't do it, but just reading the transcripts and stuff, like, it was genuinely like she was in a panic. And it was just because it's like, her daughter went to bed, and you wake up the next morning and all of a sudden, like, she's unresponsive.
Oh my gosh. I can't imagine.
Well, they didn't know Emma was dead until paramedics got there. It wasn't until paramedics got there and were like, "Yeah, no, unfortunately there is no pulse. She's not breathing. Like, we do have to say this." So the police ended up showing up, and they originally at first thought it was a suicide. Because, and when I first heard about this case, because she had been shot and stuff, I was like, why wasn't there blood? Why didn't it all soaked into her fucking mattress? So like when she's laying down in bed, like, 'cause she was laying face up. So she's laying down in bed, and the bullet ended up lodging behind her ear. So it basically all just went down into her pillow in her bed. So it wasn't like it was brain splattered. So the police originally thought it was suicide, but when crime scene techs actually showed up and got there and started taking pictures of the scene, they found that something was a little out of place. A bullet hole. And it was a huge indicator that it was not a suicide. It was a small hole, it was about shoulder high and stuff, but it was there. So like I said before, she had been shot. They found bullet casings outside and another bullet hole entry that like matched the one that they had found inside with her. So 2 bullets had been fired because they found 2 bullet casings. One had hit her behind the left ear and killed her, and the other one was lodged in her pillow. And like this wasn't like a shady neighborhood. Like she didn't live in a shady neighborhood, okay? Like
no, but also that if it was like say drive-by shooting, right? They wouldn't be finding casings just right outside her window. Like that's not
exactly
how it works.
Exactly.
I'm a little surprised that the noise didn't wake up the rest of her family or the neighbors.
It might. I mean, people may have thought. I mean, because like I live on a military base and you hear gunshots, and sometimes it really does sound like a car backfiring. And if Riley had a silencer on it, it would have muffled it a little bit more.
I suppose. But I don't think a silencer would have allowed it to go through the wall.
Yeah, true. But like, I mean, like honestly, I really couldn't find any like thing. I assume like everybody was just a really heavy sleeper and it sounded like car backfiring, because sometimes it does. Like I remember when I lived in Lakewood, like when I lived up in Lakewood and stuff, we had somebody fire a gun outside of our apartment and it sounded like a car backfiring.
Sure, but that was only one shot. They found multiple casings and there were 2 bullets in her bed. Like one in her.
Yeah, so
in her.
I couldn't find too much on why they didn't hear it. I'm assuming it was just mainly like maybe like they didn't hear the first shot and then they heard that, but it started waking their body up, but they heard the second shot and just assumed it was a car backfiring. So it's like nobody, and when you're that groggy in your sleep, that's not really something that like, especially in a neighborhood where you don't expect it. Like you don't move into this neighborhood thinking you're going to get shot. Like
also security. Yeah.
Yeah, that too. Plus like your brain does weird things and makes you think weird things, and yeah, brain does weird things. So, but it was just it like it would explain like it was just shocking. Like it was just shocking. Like Emma's. So as soon as the police realized that this was not a suicide and this was definitely a murder, they ended up getting Emma's parents out of the house. They didn't really tell them like what exactly was going on at the time, and like Emma's mom didn't really see like what had happened to Emma. She just saw her daughter laying there dead. She didn't really know yet. But that's when kind of news started spreading and stuff about Emma's death and stuff. So like her friends and her relatives and her school started finding out. When the police started actually investigating, only one name ever came up, and it was Riley's. While Riley was being looked at, and like I had actually gone onto Instagram and saw this, like all of his social media stuff is now private and everything. You can't see it unless you're friends with him. He ended up changing his Twitter and his Instagram profile pictures to a picture of Emma. And his bio for both of them basically said, "Rest easy now, sweetheart. I'll love you forever and always." But looking at it, you think, oh, guy's just grieving his girlfriend.
There's something about the rest easy now because it makes it sound like she was not
sick.
Huh?
Sick?
Not just sick, just like something was bothering her, you know? Like something wasn't okay.
I really feel like he was trying to push the suicide angle. Like he was trying to push the suicide angle without like saying it, because he knew if he did, then it would look really weird. So obviously his friends became worried about Riley because, you know, his ex-girlfriend had just died tragically, all this other stuff. It was really then that Riley kind of like letting things slip about his involvement. So his friend Alex McCarty was quoted as saying, "He ended up telling me that he was fearful for his life, that he had stolen his grandfather's gun. He showed it to me. I was very worried. He reassured me over and over again that he was the furthest thing from suicidal. He was just scared of these people who were out to get him and were out to get Emma."
Whoa, wait, who was after Emma?
No one knew. Like, literally, he was making this huge thing. Like, he would be telling his friend Alex, like, he'd been making this huge thing about how, like, oh, Emma's in danger, and, like, I'm in danger, and, oh, you guys saw the kidnapping and all this stuff or whatever, so it's like, obviously, we're in danger, but, like, why would you go steal a gun? Why wouldn't you go to the police? Why wouldn't you do this? He was also quoted as asking another friend how to remove fingerprints from a gun. And like
Kathleen,
his
we discussed
friends
that.
thought it was weird, but he was like, "Oh, not for me, obviously. I'm just curious and blah 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 and everything." Like I'm just sitting here like, "What?" So when police brought him in for questioning, Riley had like an alibi that seemed to hold up. He was saying like, "Oh, like I went to go visit my friend, like my grandparents, like all this other stuff." But like what detectives thought was really weird is that he kept referring to Emma as that girl. Like he'd be like, "Yeah, no, that like I was visiting my grandparents and that girl texted me." And they'd be like, "That girl, you mean the girl who died?" He'd be like, "Yeah, that girl." Like he would like refuse to like talk about Emma by name. And just from like the little I know about that kind of stuff, like he was trying to basically separate himself from the case because he didn't want to give away that he was very cold and detached. And it was just like the detectives were like, "What the heck?"
Yeah.
Like
That's super super shady considering how like obsessed with her that he was. They dated for 2 years. Why would he call her that girl?
right?
I mean, I had somebody I had to cut out of my life, and I refused to say her name for a while, but it was a different situation. I would call her that girl. Actually, be like, oh, that girl.
We all know who you were talking about.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I know there's a few people listening that know exactly what we're talking about, but
We love
so
you. It's okay.
okay, couple things. First of all, obviously there's some very guilty behavior going on there, but
Very
I'm
guilty.
wondering if this wasn't some kind of like paranoid schizophrenic episode where he really thought people were out to get him,
See,
or it's just him saying, "I don't know, there are people that are out to get us." That's
see,
where the
I thought that too. Like, I thought maybe mental illness will play a part. And his defense had tried like using that as like a thing, but he was cleared completely. He didn't have any kind of schizophrenic issues. He didn't have any kind of like multiple personality issues. Nothing. Like, quite honestly, he staged all of this to try and get Emma back. And when it didn't work, he killed her.
Yeah. Or
Riley
he
told
did
the
it trying to scare her because the last time she was scared, she called him, and it was wrong.
So Riley told the detectives that he'd gone to a friend's house, and then he went and saw his grandparents. Then he drove back down to his dorm and kind of like broke down and was like all emotional and like cried for 3 hours and stuff. But he was very emotionally detached during the actual interview. Like completely emotionally detached. When they asked him like about the gun and like his inquiries about like wiping the fingerprints away, he denied everything. He said, "No, that wasn't true. Like I have my grandfather's gun, but that I didn't steal it from him and all this other stuff. Like I wasn't asking about that." And so once Riley's friends, like Alex and another friend, found out that like Riley could be lying to the police, they were like, "No, this needs to stop." So they actually ended up calling law enforcement. It was like, "Look, we know Riley is lying. We know that he may have had a hand in Emma's death. We want to help you figure out if he did or not." And so law enforcement were obviously super like concerned because they were like, "Okay, well, we're concerned about your safety." Yeah. Because if we send you into this and he really is as violent as we think he is, then you guys could be in danger. And they were like, "No, we understand, but we want to do this because we want to be able to get justice for Emma."
Right.
And stuff. Like if he did this, he needs to pay. So they ended up actually like getting wired up and hanging out with Riley. And like he sang like a canary. Like he like told them like things that would implicate the crap out of him. I don't think he ever actually came out and said, "Oh yeah, no, I killed her," but he definitely did tell them things that could implicate the crap out of him. And that was more than enough for officers to arrest him. So, like I said before, Riley's defense had like tried to use I believe they tried to use like the mental health side, but he was cleared on all that. So they tried to use like the whole, "Oh, he was just trying to scare Emma." The shots weren't meant to kill her. They were just meant to like scare her. They weren't meant to like take her life.
Right. But they did.
Yep. They did. So after 5 hours, only 5 of deliberation, the jury found Riley guilty of first-degree murder, as well as reckless endangerment, stalking, theft, being in possession of a firearm during a dangerous felony, and multiple other counts. He was actually sentenced to life with parole after 51 years. So when he's 71, he'll be able to have a chance to get out, but I highly doubt that's happening. At his hearing, he actually made a statement to Emma's family the entire time, like during the whole trial and everything. He never said a word, never looked at them, never said a word. But at the hearing, he's made a statement saying, "quote I'm sorry I took Emma away from you. That I robbed you of an experience of watching your daughter grow up. What I can do is tell the truth about that night. I wanted to scare her. I never meant to take Emma's life. Again, I am so sorry." Unquote. And I sit there and I look at it and I'm like, this is why so many people are afraid to leave abusive situations, because this is how it reacts. It boils my blood whenever people are like, well, why don't you just leave? Because if I leave, I could die. That's the thing is you could die. Like, it's not like oh, well, it's a bad relationship type thing. Like, Emma left this relationship and she paid with it with her life. And it just breaks my heart because, she was a 16-year-old girl. She had like this whole world ahead of her, and this guy took it away because he felt this possessive need to have her.
So I've spent time not as a victim. Just want to put that disclaimer out there. I've spent time in safe houses. There was one year with my campfire group, we went to one of the safe houses because we made like bags for the kids. Because oftentimes when women go to these safe houses, these shelters,
they don't have anything.
They have nothing. They don't even have a toothbrush. They have the clothes on their back and that's it. So we made little bags for the kids. They'd have we just did Oriental trading. So we had like a stuffed animal, like a toothbrush, and some candy, just in like coloring books, just like things for the kids so that they had something. And oftentimes we were told by the people at the house that those stuffed animals were huge because it was like a source of comfort to these kids that had nothing. And but the fact that like these houses were like secure, like you had to be buzzed in the door. They had double doors. They had cameras like everywhere, and
they have escape routes.
Huh?
Yeah, those houses will also have escape routes. They will have like routes inside the actual walls, so that way if somebody does end up breaking in, the women can get out in a safe way. Like, they are secure. Like, they're to the point where they're like that. But it's like, she was a 16-year-old girl safe in her own home. She should have been safe in her own home. Like, that's the thing.
Sleeping.
And like, my heart breaks for her parents because it's like, you go to bed and you kiss your kid goodnight and you go to bed and you think you're going to see them the next morning when they wake up. And instead you slept through them getting shot to death. And I feel so bad for Jill and Mark because it's like, that's the kind of stuff that just stays with you because because they're always going to wonder what would have happened if I had just woken up and heard it. Like, what would have happened if we had moved her room? What would have happened if we had switched houses? What would have happened if we did this? And so they're going to always have these what ifs going through their mind. And Jill, she posts like every year on Emma's birthday and every year on the anniversary, she posts these absolutely lovely posts and stuff. But it just breaks your heart because she would give anything and everything in the world to have her kid back here.
It's sad, and I honestly I believe that Riley wasn't trying to hurt her. Okay, I'll say that. I don't believe he was honestly trying to hurt her. I think he was just trying to use fear to control her, which is bad. Okay?
Yeah, it's terrible.
What he did by any means is okay. I can see the side of it, though, where he was honestly just trying to scare her. Because when he, when he scared her the first time, the man in black, who'd she contact? She contacted him. So if she honestly felt like she was in any kind of danger and she's scared, what is she going to do? She's going to contact him. Probably, he thinks. That's his line of thinking. Clearly not a sane thing, a sane line of thinking. I really am surprised it took the police really as long as it did to really, truly consider Riley, considering there was, that protection order in place.
There wasn't a protection order, though.
Why not?
There was never a protection order. It was just Emma's parents trying to just keep her away from him. Because, again, they had no proof that they had no physical evidence that Riley was abusive. That was the issue.
Because Snapchat erased
it. Doesn't matter. That is not a viable thing for a protection order. He never physically laid hands on her.
That they know of.
But he never physically laid hands on her. They never had any proof that he never physically laid hands on her. And unfortunately, that's the basis of a lot of protection orders. So that's the issue. So Emma would have been 20 this year. Like 20 years old, going to college, like getting her degree, doing all that, figuring out who she was. But because of a relationship that she had been in that ended terribly, she was taken from the world and everything that she had wanted to do. If you or a loved one is a victim of domestic violence, please call the hotline at 800-799-SAFE or visit www.thehotline.org.
Thank you for listening to True Crime and Chill. For more information, including case notes, photos, and sources, visit our website at truecrimeandchill.com. You can also stay connected with us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Look for new episodes from us each week on Tuesdays.